It had been raining for hours in the quiet town of Ashbourne. The streets glistened under amber street lamps, and a steady drizzle painted a blur over the car windows. Inside a dusty blue Dodge Ram pickup, Ethan Carter, 31, sat drumming his fingers on the steering wheel, parked outside an old auto repair shop he'd inherited from his late father. Ethan wasn't the kind of man who talked much. He worked with his hands, fixed broken things. But some things, like the hollow inside his chest, weren't so easily fixed. That ache had a name, Emma. His baby sister. Gone since she was 5. His mom, long gone. His dad, now buried. And Emma, she vanished one night when their drunk uncle left the door unlocked. A kidnapping. A ghost. No leads. Just photos yellowed with time and guilt. He exhaled hard, wiping condensation from the windshield. That's when he saw her. A girl in a soaked hoodie, no more than 22, stood at the bus stop across the street, shivering under the dim glow. No umbrella. No shelter. A cardboard box of belongings sat at her feet, water licking the bottom edges. She looked familiar. Ethan opened the door and stepped into the rain, grabbing a spare hoodie from the back seat. "Hey, you all right?" She startled, hugging her box tighter. "I'm not crazy. Just figured you might want a dry ride." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Bus never showed. He handed her the hoodie. "You can toss that box in the back." Once inside the truck, she turned toward the heater, rubbing her fingers. "I'm Ethan. Rachel." He nodded, glancing at her from the corner of his eye. There was a scar near her right eyebrow, just like Emma had. He didn't say anything. "You from around here, Rachel?" She shifted in her seat. "Kind of. Been moving around a lot." They drove in silence for a while. "You got somewhere to be?" Rachel bit her lip. "I was hoping to find a friend here. Turns out she moved." Ethan nodded, then spoke before thinking. "You can crash at the back of my shop for the night. Spare cot. No weird intentions, I swear." She looked surprised. "Why are you being nice to me?" Ethan hesitated. "You remind me of someone." That night, Rachel slept on the cot behind Ethan's office, wrapped in a warm blanket. Ethan sat outside the door, holding an old photo. Emma, age 5. That scar near her brow. Could it be? But he'd seen therapists. He knew better than to latch onto hope. People see what they want to see. Still, something tugged deep in his chest. The next morning, Rachel was up early, sweeping the shop floor. "You don't have to do that," Ethan said, sipping coffee. "I want to earn my stay." He smiled. "All right then." Over the next few days, Rachel proved kind, smart, and startlingly familiar. She laughed at Ethan's old jokes. She loved lemon pie, Emma's favorite. She even hummed the same lullaby Ethan used to sing to her. "You ever lose family?" Ethan asked one evening. Rachel looked away. "I was adopted. But yeah, I've always felt like something was missing." Ethan's heart pounded. That night, after Rachel had gone to sleep, he pulled out the dusty old shoebox from the attic. It held Emma's baby hair, a hospital bracelet, and the DNA report he'd never used. Until now. He quietly took Rachel's used paper cup from the trash. 2 days passed. The DNA sample was already in the hands of a private lab Ethan knew in Portland. Discreet. No questions asked. He told himself it was just a precaution. A way to quiet the voice whispering wild hope in his chest. But as Rachel continued staying with him, that hope grew louder. She was comfortable around grease and engines, unusual for a girl who claimed she never stayed anywhere long. She liked the same obscure rock band Ethan and Emma had danced to as kids in the living room. She even used a weird phrase, cozy ugly, that Ethan hadn't heard since he was 8. He remembered Emma describing his ratty blanket that way. Cozy ugly. Still, he didn't ask. Not yet. One evening, Ethan took Rachel to a local diner. He watched her stare out the window as rain tapped softly on the glass. "You okay?" She nodded. "Just thinking. I've been moving for so long. Staying anywhere this long makes me nervous." "You can stay as long as you want." She smiled, but something flickered in her eyes. "You don't even know me." "Maybe not," he said. "But sometimes people come into your life for a reason." Rachel looked down. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why do you live alone? I mean, you're kind, smart, not ugly. What happened?" Ethan exhaled, slowly. "I lost my sister when I was a kid. She was taken. Right out of the house. Our family fell apart after that. Mom left. Dad drowned himself in guilt. I stayed. Kept the shop. Tried to build something that didn't vanish." Rachel's eyes welled. "I'm sorry." He smiled weakly. "Not your fault." But she didn't reply. She just looked at him, with a gaze that seemed to know something. Later that night, while Rachel was brushing her hair in the small shop bathroom, Ethan paced in his office, phone pressed to his ear. The lab tech's voice came through. "Ethan, it's a match. A 99.99% probability. Rachel is your biological sister." Ethan sat down hard. The world went quiet. He stared at the wall, at the dusty old photo of Emma with a popsicle stain on her chin. He had her back. But the storm hadn't even started yet. The next morning, he made pancakes, Emma's favorite again. When she walked into the office kitchen, her face lit up. "Smells like childhood." He chuckled. "You said that before." Rachel blinked. "I did. Last week. When I made lemon pie." She stared at the plate. "That's weird. I don't remember saying that. Sometimes memories come out in strange ways." He sat down. Looked at her. Really looked at her. "Rachel, what if I told you I knew who you were?" She flinched slightly. "What do you mean?" He pulled out the baby bracelet. "The photo. The DNA results. You're Emma. My sister. You were taken 25 years ago." She stared at the papers, her face frozen. "That's not possible. You have the scar. You talk like her. You remember things you shouldn't." Rachel stood. Her chair scraped loudly. "No. I'm not. That's not. I don't remember any of this." Ethan stood too. "I didn't want to scare you. I just needed to know." She backed away. "I have a life. I have a name. This isn't mine." She ran. Out the door. Into the rain. Ethan chased after her, but she vanished into the alleys of Ashbourne. He spent the night driving, calling, hoping she'd come back. But she didn't. Not until 3 days later, when she returned to the shop, soaked, pale, and holding a crumpled photo in her hands. It was a photo of her as a child, the one her adoptive father had kept in his drawer. She'd found it again, flipped it over. On the back, in faded ink, Emma, age 4. Before she was taken. She walked into the shop, tears streaming down her face. "I think you're right," she whispered. "But I don't know who I am anymore." Ethan pulled her into a hug. Tight. Like he was anchoring her to something real. "You're my sister. That's all you need to know for now." They stood like that, in silence, as rain thudded softly on the roof overhead. The space between. For the first time in years, Ethan felt like the ground beneath him was solid. But for Rachel, Emma, the world had just begun to crack open. They didn't tell anyone right away. She wasn't ready. Ethan respected that. The days that followed were quiet, full of hesitant conversations, long walks down foggy roads, and old photos pulled from Ethan's attic. Sometimes they laughed. Emma remembered the name of Ethan's childhood stuffed animal, Rusty. But other times, she would sit in a daze, staring at a picture for hours, unable to connect to the girl smiling back. "I feel like a puzzle with half the pieces glued in the wrong place," she said once, curled on the shop couch. "You don't have to rush it," Ethan said. "We've got time." But time had a way of digging up things you thought were buried. One morning, Emma sat with a cup of coffee, flipping through a children's book Ethan had found, one she used to beg him to read aloud when she was little. Suddenly, her fingers froze on a page. "There was a woman," she whispered. "She used to hum this same tune when I couldn't sleep. She called me Birdie." Ethan blinked. "You remember something?" I don't know. It's like a smell from childhood. Fleeting, but warm. She placed a hand over her heart. I think she was kind to me. Ethan leaned forward. Your adoptive mom? I think so. She died when I was 11. Cancer. Her husband. He wasn't the same after. Quiet. Cold. Emma hesitated. He always told me I was chosen, but he never said from where. Ethan sat back, stunned. You were stolen. She nodded slowly. I think. I always knew I didn't belong. A week later, she stood at the mirror in the shop's tiny bathroom, holding one of Ethan's flannel shirts up to her chest. She looked like a Carter. Same nose. Same half-smile. But she also looked like someone else, someone shaped by years she couldn't name. She stared into her reflection and whispered, Who am I without them? That night, Ethan found Emma crying on the shop floor, an open box of keepsakes around her. She clutched a drawing, one she'd made at age 4. It had been tucked in her old backpack. The only item returned to the Carters after she vanished. A crooked sun. A boy and a girl holding hands. The boy had yellow hair. You drew this, Ethan said softly. You used to say the sun was happier when it smiled crooked. She laughed, tears slipping down her cheeks. What a weird kid I was. He sat beside her. You're still weird. Still mine. But healing wasn't linear. The next morning, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up outside the shop. Sheriff Daniels stepped out, hands on his belt. Ethan met him on the porch. Heard something strange through the grapevine, Daniels said. Your new helper. That the missing Carter girl? Ethan hesitated. Yeah. She's Emma. Daniels nodded. You filed a report? Not yet. She's still processing. Well, Daniels said, shifting uncomfortably. That's the thing. Her adoptive father? Guy named Glenn Ritter. He filed a missing persons report last week. Says his daughter ran off with a mechanic. Ethan's blood ran cold. She didn't run. She found home. Daniels sighed. Look, Ethan, I believe you. But there are procedures. You need to bring her in for an official statement. There'll be an investigation. That night, Emma sat silent in the corner of the office as Ethan relayed the news. I don't want to see him, she whispered. He wasn't cruel. But he wasn't kind either. He let me believe I was his. Lied. Every day. You don't have to face him alone. Emma looked at him. What if the law sides with him? They won't, Ethan said. You're an adult. You've got proof. And I'm not letting you disappear again. She nodded, but her eyes told a different story. That night, Ethan stayed up, guarding the door like he used to when they were kids afraid of thunderstorms. But in the morning, Emma was gone. She left behind a note, written in shaky handwriting. Finding Emma. Ethan read the note a dozen times before the words finally meant something. She was gone. Again. But this time, she chose to leave. And that choice hurt more than anything else. 4 days, he searched. He called shelters. Drove to bus stations. Asked around coffee shops. Her face, once a mystery, was now etched into his heart. And yet she was nowhere. The town talked. Whispers. Speculations. Some believed she'd lied. Others thought she was confused. But Ethan knew better. This wasn't a disappearance. It was a reckoning. Weeks passed. Then months. The shop ran quieter. Ethan worked longer hours, not because he had to, but because fixing engines gave him silence. And silence hurt less than memories. He framed the old drawing she left. Hung it above his desk. A crooked sun. A girl with black hair. A boy with yellow. He hadn't lost her. Not again. He was simply waiting. 6 months later. On a windy October evening, the bell over the shop door jingled. Ethan didn't look up at first. Just kept scrubbing oil from a gasket. Then he heard the voice. Hey, grease monkey. His head snapped up. She stood there. Wind-blown hair. A duffel bag over her shoulder. And something else. A piece in her eyes that wasn't there before. "I traveled west," she said as he poured her coffee. "Found the town where Glenn lived before he moved. Talked to a neighbor. She remembered a little girl with a different name. Said she disappeared one night, and Glenn came back with a miracle daughter. No adoption papers. No record." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Did you tell the police?" "I didn't have to. A private investigator picked it up after I shared our DNA results. Turns out, Glenn was being watched for unrelated fraud. They connected the dots. And he's facing charges. He confessed." She looked down. "Said he was drunk. That he didn't mean to take me. That he found me wandering near a gas station and just drove." Ethan stared at her. "That was the night you were taken." She nodded. "I don't remember it. Just fear. And a toy I dropped. A yellow one." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. "Your duck. You called him Peep." She smiled faintly. "Peep." They sat for a long time, not speaking. Then she pulled something from her bag. A photo, her and Ethan, taken weeks before she ran. Their first sibling selfie. Printed. Worn. "I kept this with me every day," she whispered. "When I doubted. When I broke down in cheap motels. When I almost gave up. I'm glad you didn't. I wanted to be sure that I wasn't just running from one identity into another. I needed to find me." "And did you?" he asked. She looked out the window at the sun slipping behind the trees. "I found a version of me. One who's scarred. Uncertain. But loved. And not lost anymore." She stood and walked to the office corner. Picked up the stuffed animal Ethan had placed there months ago. "Rusty, can I come home now?" she asked, her voice shaking. Ethan stood. Crossed the room. Pulled her into his arms. "You never left," he whispered. 6 months later, the shop had 2 owners. The sign outside now read, "Carter & Carter Auto, family owned, finally found." Emma took to fixing engines with ease. But she also started a side project, writing. Her first blog post went viral, "How I Found My Brother in a Rusty Truck on the Side of the Road." She called it fate. Ethan called it home. And every year after that, on the day they reunited, they shared lemon pie and crooked sun drawings. Because sometimes, family isn't lost. Just waiting to be remembered. The end.